All set.
Okay. Welcome. Today is Tuesday, August 8th.
September.
7 o'clock.
September 8th.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I got August there on my paper. So it is September 8th. We are Whitman Finance Committee. We're meeting virtually in the Zoom format. And just go over the agenda everybody received by email in advance. We have 4 meeting minutes, all in the month of July. Our reserve fund stands now at a $50,000 balance. Public forum is suspended due to the restrictions associated with the COVID-19. Under new business, we could reorganize and establish perhaps our liaison assignments if we have time. And we have some communication. One is related to the regional agreement amendment, which was accepted by DESI. Under old business, we do have subcommittee reports as a placeholder for the Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee, the Regional Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, and we'll probably add a subcommittee for the Whitman Middle School Building Committee. And that way we can get a regular update from our delegates to that committee. And under old business, just touch on the Whitman-Hanson non-mandated busing credit. We did get a communication from the district regarding a credit. And then we have some additional communications, and we have no upcoming meetings scheduled as of yet. So basically, this is a kind of a cleanup meeting. We'll get see if we can knock out those 4 meeting minutes drafts and reorganize, and we'll maybe get a couple of weeks before we have to dive into the next budget season. And then if anybody else has anything they want to bring up, certainly entertain that under new business. So with that, does everybody have a copy of the 4 meeting minutes?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll start on July 7th. So absent from this meeting was John and Dave. So we have 1, 2, 3. It's a 4-page meeting. Does anybody have anything that they want to correct on the first page, which is page number 316?
No.
And basically, the first page, we were just approving meeting minutes from previous meetings. Second page is page 317. Again, 2 more meeting minutes were accepted at the top of that page. We held over the reorganization. Anything else on page 317? Okay, page 318. We just discussed a little bit about the logistics for town meeting. We did reconsider line item 145. Then we reconsidered line 258. And the budget discussion was held at the bottom of page 318. Does anybody have anything they want to change on that page? And the final page, we talked a little bit about both town meetings and discussed a little bit about the support of the statutory method. And the last part of that meeting was to read the communication from the Board of Selectmen, which gave the position of town council with regard to publishing in the Whitman Express. Anybody have any changes that they want to? Yes, Kathleen.
Just the spelling of town council. It should be SEL because it's the attorney.
Okay. Town legal counsel in the final paragraph?
In the final paragraph twice, it should be COUNSEL.
Okay, Samantha, you get that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else under that particular meeting minutes? All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of July 7th as amended.
Kathleen will move them.
Okay,
Second them.
Rosemary seconds. All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. John, you're
Muted.
muted?
I read his lips.
Abstain.
Oh, same.
Abstain. Okay, Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Dave,
Abstain.
abstains, Al,
Yes.
and Chuck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, moving on to the next meeting minutes, July 14th. 1, 2, 2 and a little bit on the third page. Meeting minutes from July 14th, page number 320 to start. Again, we held over the reorganization, looking at the handout that was prepared for a meeting, town meeting. And again, talked about the 2 town meeting agendas. That's on page 320. Anybody have any changes? For this meeting, the only one absent was Scott. So everybody would be voting on this particular meeting. Seeing none, we'll move to page 321. So that discussing continued regarding the assessment and the warrant article associated with it. Article 6 was tabled for more questions. And we approved the payment of the Finance Committee annual dues. And talked a little bit about full-day kindergarten. And at the bottom of the page, talked a little bit about the annual report. Anybody have anything they want to add or take away from that page? Okay, and the final page is more or less just a motion to adjourn. Opening statement, we asked about the opening statement, and the draft would be, it was not drafted yet. So, meeting adjourned at 8:04. Any changes to page 322? Okay. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from July 14th.
Kathleen moves it.
Second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, roll call. John,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, thank you. Next meeting minutes are July 21st. Going to quite a long meeting, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages.
There was an email sent out for us to review these prior to the meeting so that we could submit any changes to Samantha. I was okay with it. Did everybody else, so that we don't have to go through all 5 pages? Has everybody reviewed them, or do we need to go through them?
I've reviewed
them.
Did anybody submit any changes, Samantha? No. Okay. So the only reason, just to clarify, why I requested, if you do email Samantha with a request to make an amendment, I just like to be CC'd so I can just add the discussion when we vote the meeting minutes.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from July 21st.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes as presented from July 21st. Further discussion? Okay, we'll go to roll call vote. John,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you very much.
That speeds things up.
That sped things up quite a bit. Yes, so Samantha, we appreciate you sending that out and requesting amendments. That was a very, very detailed meeting minutes and very.
Yeah, great job. Great
Yeah,
job.
excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, so the final meeting minute is the, basically the non-meeting prior to the annual town meeting. So Samantha just put together a summary, and more or less we just distributed the agenda and related documents, and then asked the members to review and provide feedback regarding the opening statement, which was finally drafted at that point. So, does anybody have any changes that they would like to see on this meeting minutes? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Kathleen moves the minutes.
Chuck will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Okay, all in favor of accepting the meeting minutes from July 27th? John,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes,
Dave,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and I vote yes too. Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. Got rid of all the old meeting minutes. Again, kudos to Samantha for putting all those together and getting them here for this meeting. So
Yes.
under new business, so we'll move to reorganization. I will open up the reorganization with motions for chair.
I nominate Rick.
Okay, we
I
have-
second that nomination.
All right, we have further nominations for chair. Further nominations? Okay. We'll go to roll call vote, I guess. John?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes,
Dave?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Thank you very much. We'll now move to nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Dave for vice chair.
I'll second that.
We have a nomination and a second for vice chair. Further nominations?
Well, no, it's good.
Al?
I'm good.
You
Yeah.
gonna say something? Okay. All right. So we'll move to close the nominations for vice chair. And we'll take a roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes,
Dave?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, and for the final position, again, these are more or less symbolic. I do feel that this committee is very well suited for anybody to take the helm at any point, and I stand by the comments that I made at the town meeting to say that I believe that this group is a group that really gets the job done. So I appreciate all of your input. So with that, I'll entertain a motion or entertain nominations for clerk.
I nominate Chuck.
Okay, we have a nomination for Chuck. We
I'll
have a
second that.
All right, nomination, you can't get out of it, Chuck. There's no way now.
I guess not.
All right, further nominations for clerk. All right, I will close nominations and we'll take a roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
yes,
Dave?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Okay, thank you very much. So I don't know if anybody, did I send out a copy of the old designations for liaisons? It's something we don't really have to do now. We could actually hold off on and people could take a look at the list of departments.
can we hold off on it? Because I think I'd like maybe thinking about switching around
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
and discussing.
I have a copy of the file if you want me to display it.
Do you want to distribute it? Just send it out? to
Yeah,
everybody?
I don't think you sent it out recently, Rick.
Yeah.
The file that I have says fiscal year 19. So
You sent it at the beginning, I think, when you
Yeah.
got on, right when you got
Okay.
on, we sent it out.
right.
So Samantha has the most updated version because she's the one that makes the changes to that
Alright.
particular document. So Samantha, if you could forward it to the committee, our most recent copy.
Yep.
And then from there, we do have the joint liaison listing where it lists the Board of Selectmen and the Board of the Finance Committee designations, where it has both and everybody's email addresses and communication. So in years past, what we have somewhat suggested was that if you are the liaison for a particular department, like the DPW, and you sent a communication to the DPW as part of, trying to communicate a little on a personal level, that you CC the corresponding liaison with the Board of Selectmen, with the hopes that somehow that'll prime the pump to get a communication line open with the Board of Selectmen for continuity. And there's two schools of thought. I mean, some people say that the two boards work pretty good independently and can just come together at an intermittent basis, or we could have more of joint meetings. And again, that's certainly at the board's discretion. So with that, just try to take a look at the list of the departments and something that you feel particularly strongly about. Certainly make a request when we bring this back up again at our next meeting. All right. Anybody else thoughts?
Perfect, Rick. Perfect.
Well, plus, I guess I just saw the Scott's email recently, just a few minutes ago. So obviously we have a hole now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're going to have to get somebody else. So maybe, Rick, if you reach out to the moderator to see if there was anybody in line who might have been interested before, because I think everybody would agree that it'd be good to have a full committee.
Absolutely. And the sooner the better. I mean, before you start the budget cycle, it's always best to get somebody in, from the beginning, because once we start, it's hard to jump on the merry-go-round, Rosemary, were you going to make a point?
No, we had somebody on the committee not too long ago that had just stepped down, and I'm blanking on his name. He's so nice. I know he was busy up at the State House, but
Oh, Greg.
Greg,
that's right.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Greg. Anybody want to see if he would reconsider right now? I just think he'd be.
Well, I'm sure he watches all the meetings.
Yeah.
He lives in my neighborhood, so
Yes.
I'll ask him.
Ask
Doesn't hurt
him.
to ask.
And
Worst thing he can say is
I'm
no.
having a bad name week, so that wasn't.
He did.
Greg's fault, it was
He
mine.
absolutely did have some great insight being in
He
his
did.
position.
And
Sure.
ideas that were really,
I'll be happy to throw it out there to him when I see him over the next few days. I usually see him and see what he says.
All right, and suggestion to reach out to the moderator, that's a good idea. I'll do that.
And Andrea, she didn't want to before, but would she consider it?
Yeah, I'll give her a call tonight. Talk to the
Yeah.
moderator.
She's
Not my
smart.
wife, Andrea Kenny.
Both Andreas would be fine, but Andrea Kenny would be really, she's smart. Great with numbers.
All right, excellent. All right, so we will follow up on that. The next item on the agenda is a regional agreement amendment letter. So the letter came, everybody should have got a copy. I forwarded on. It came August 18th. This was from DESI to the superintendent, Jeff Samanak. And basically it just concurred with the recommendation by both towns for the amendment to the regional agreement. So it actually took a little while, August 18th, for them to finally accept it. Any thoughts about that particular item? Okay.
Rick?
Oh, sorry, Kathleen, go ahead.
Not specific to that communication, but the whole, on the whole topic of the assessment. Since town meetings concluded, the minimum local contribution for Hanson and for Whitman have been revised. And since we never used the statutory method in the past, it never impacted the assessment. But I have emailed John Tuffy and asked him how the assessment, the MLCs affect the assessment, because Hanson's assessment went up by $7,000. Whitman's went down by $97,000. So I did a quick calculation and suggested to John Tuffy that translates into a $20,000 shift using the hybrid method.
Oh,
And John said it's a little more complicated than that, in that DESI is going to weigh in with advice to all regional schools, because it will affect all regional schools, how to recalculate their members' assessments in this year of COVID-19 uncertainty. So they are aware that there may be a need to recalculate the fiscal 21 assessments. It's not something that I'm going to lose sight of, but there is advice from DESI to hold off, and they will come back with advice to all of the regional agreements, all of the regional school districts.
So that was an additional memo that came from John Tuffy. I don't know if it was in reaction to your inquiry. However, he did send that to the school committee and CC the
Yep.
superintendent. And the numbers that you stated, 21,653 would be an increase to Hanson. Is that the number you said?
Right, and a decrease to Whitman.
By 21,653. And what he suggests is that that they wait till the state has a budget, right?
Yep.
Like you said.
Yep.
And then the school committee should decide on how, I guess, on how they want
How
to
they
move
do
forward
that.
with it.
I am, before we go and do this, I would also like to, the math behind the statement, Hanson can't afford it. I want to know the numbers that people use to determine that, especially now that we see that Hanson has $1 million plus in free cash. I want to see the financial data that was used to state that our bond rating is lower than Hanson's. In the Moody's bond rating, well, they were saying that their bond rating was going up November 19th. So I sent our bond rate, our Moody's along, and I want people to read underneath the recommendations to bring our bond rating up. The money should have been going into our town and, stabilizing our finances. So, because we have financial issues that we need to address. So I need to hear that people were responsible to Whitman citizens when they gave recommendations. And I want to know the financial data that they used when they said Whitman could afford it and Hanson couldn't, because I really, I'm concerned about it, especially as I see that $1 million plus and watch them spend it. They opened up their recreational when we were unable to do that for our own children. There was a lot, and I think that they need to be accountable. So how we divide this up really also depends on if Hanson can afford kind of have that little bit extra on their own. So.
Very good, Rosemary. Thank you for your comments. So as a follow-up to Rosemary's comments, yeah, I would suggest that the board does take a look at Hanson Selectmen's meeting from the 25th of August. I want to make sure I got the date right. 25th of August. And there should be someone that takes a look at the financial statement that they reviewed in their meeting to see, exactly, if their inability to pay, or the fact that they said they were unable to pay their share of the assessment was based on fact, or were we misled? So I think Rosemary makes a good point. I think what we need to do is to follow up. And I think maybe, our town accountant, if he had a copy of the financial documents that were read into that meeting, to review and to find out if in fact they were not in a position where they needed to get help to pay their bills, as they said. So if you do recall, when we had the school committee at our meeting, I did ask the superintendent how much confidence he had in the statement that Hanson is making about their inability to pay. And, he really didn't have any information. Nobody really clarified what they were basing that, decision on, or, did they have any of these financial documents from the town of Hanson? So yeah, it's a good discussion. I think it should be had.
I think a bigger discussion should have been not Hanson at all, but what did we owe our community? And we owe our community a great bond rating, the ability to borrow. We just left, an amazing economy, and we didn't save and we didn't put money away at the rates that Hanson did. We didn't pay off debts and handle those things at the rate that Hanson did. And their bond rating is better. We didn't follow those Moody recommendations. And here we are going into a period where we might not have that money and that revenue. And that was That's dangerous, and that's not good financial practice. And I think we all know that. I think we've got to be really careful not to be political, and to really watch those numbers and make sure we're using real data sets and not listening to those million phone calls you get from, different politicians, let's call them, and really looking at numbers. We owe that to our community as a finance committee. We take an oath to do that. I think when we look at our two Moody ratings, knowing that their rating went up in November, and then ours has a real risk of going down right now, I don't think we served our community. I'm really concerned. That means every penny we borrow, we pay more on right now. So please watch these things and have real data sets. Don't have emotional statements, real data that we're using. Thanks.
Thank you, Rosemary. Anybody else, anything further on this? We'll obviously bring this back up when we follow up on the status at our next meeting. Other business. Also under old business, subcommittee reports, as I mentioned, we're going to expand Whitman Middle School Building Committee. John, anything from scheduling our next?
We have not had a official meeting yet, though I have had some communications with George Farrow in the superintendent's office and Michelle. There were two documents that were due August 31st. And according to Michelle, those were filed on time. So so far there were 5 documents that MSB that they needed, and those 5 documents have been supplied. Supposedly we're meeting sometime in September. At this point right now, I'm thinking it's probably going to be October, with school now opening up mid-September. But so far, I mean, what we've needed to file so far, we've filed. So far, so good.
And Dave, are you also a voting member of that committee now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So again, we look forward to reports from both of you as things move forward. One thing I'd just like to throw out there as you move into the first phase of the thing is assessments and the Park Ave School. Do you think that the former Park Ave School in Whitman, do you think as a site that could play into any plans? I know it's kind of out of the box, but if we looked globally and a real wide picture about the future of education in Whitman, whether or not, it's going to include Hanson, or, if they move forward with their deregionalization discussion, how would that Park Ave School play into the matrix? So I just want to throw that out there. It's certainly just one of the things that we should include in any discussion we have about moving forward to build a new school. So what's your thought, John? Anything?
Obviously it's not included in what what the state's approved for us. It's a very small property, honestly, for anything
It's
other than
small.
a small school. I used to have my T-ball practices down there when I was coaching T-ball, I mean, it's not a lot of room down there, honestly.
Yeah. It is a challenging site, no doubt about it, but it's something that, its use is very limited because of the fact that it can only be used for a school. That's why there's been no discussion about using it for anything else. But, quite frankly, the lot itself is pretty big when you incorporate the trees and the coming out to South Ave. It's a pretty long site, you know what I mean? So like I said, just wanted to throw it out there for discussion. Dave.
Well, yeah. Any discussion on that has to start with the town administrator's decision or conclusion on whether or not that is a buildable site or not. In my term in FinCom, we've had various comments from town administrator and others whether or not that property can be used for anything but education, and we've never seen the documents. So there's a lot of there's misinformation out there. So I think the first step is getting the town administrator to tell us what that property can be used for.
Okay. So,
Present the documents? Is that what you're asking? So all documents related to that particular.
I don't care about the documents. I just, if it comes down to the town administrator saying yay or nay, fine. And
Well,
then let us tell us.
Do you remember a meeting we had where he said that he had reached out to the state and they were to see if they could nullify any educational clauses to that particular land? If that was, I thought I remember him saying that.
yeah, well, we definitely had that discussion. Yeah, we had that discussion before, and that's what it was stated, that, the restrictions.
You made a statement about regional schools just right before this, and you said, well, if we split, now, I think I told you, I did call up the man who did the audit, and the state will make that final decision. Hanson just can't say goodbye to a region, and Whitman can't just say. It would have to be an agreement between both towns. And so we would have to say yes to that, and that would have to fit us financially. And the state would then have to approve it. Hanson hasn't met the minimum amount of children. I mean, I am uncomfortable. I mean, I don't know who's paying attention to the numbers over there. Again, before I even take this serious, I want to know that people actually understand the numbers. I worry, again, this is political, and it's a disservice to both, to Hanson citizens, a little game to try to manipulate how we finance. We should be using those numbers. We should be rolling forward with our Madden, no matter what. We should be, if Hanson plays their game on their side, because that doesn't match any of the numbers from the state. They're too small to deregionalize and make it affordable. Right. And they should be honest. So again, we've got to use real numbers. We've got to use real data sets, and not even consider making any moves without those numbers. We know right now we'll be funding at that 5% rolling forward. We know that the statutory method is a method that determines what a town can, that gives a great idea of what a town can really afford. And we know you should be looking at 25 to 30% above minimal local contribution. And we know how to hold everybody accountable to pay appropriately, not more, not less, appropriately. I hope that we stick to those numbers and we don't get political and we don't get pushed with rhetoric like they don't have enough, they can't pay, or we're going to deregionalize. I haven't seen numbers that support that would be best for Hanson. I think there's a lot of smart people in Hanson that want to pay the best price for the best education, and they're going to figure out, smart people figured out that they should take that override, take the agreement, and smart people will figure out that this is a scam and that they're not going to have a good education for their kids outside of the region. They're not. So I think I'm not going to plan for that. Okay. I'm not going to plan unless it represents, unless I can see numbers that are best. I'm not going to let the politics. We've got a lot of political people mucking up their information.
And I'm going to get to you, Al. I just want to apologize for maybe derailing the discussion a little bit by the way I explained it. But really, I just thought that maybe because we have two members of the Finance Committee who now sit on a school building committee, that if in the back of their mind they kept that in mind. But Al, go ahead.
No, just a thought though too. Who controls the building?
Right now, from what we understand, it is the district that the only thing that can be built on that particular site is a school, and it has to do with the way in which the land was donated to the town. I believe it was a part of a bequest. I believe so. That's the limited amount of information I can remember. But like I said, it's just something we keep in the back of our mind because it is an asset of the town. It should be something that the Finance Committee is,
that can also be
mindful of.
That can be turned over to the town too for other uses too. Like the town of Hingham, I'm telling you, John knows too, right? The old Hingham Police Department was for law enforcement, and they ended up selling the property off. Now it's a dentist's office now.
Right. So there's ways around those.
Right.
Yeah,
I think the land was donated by a family. I think that's why it has those beautiful plants, and the land was donated for this use. So it's a trust almost. So I think there might be rules based on that. Does anybody remember the name of the family? It's an old Whitman family that had a
This
big
is all
house.
speculation. Can we move on to some
Yeah.
facts? We're just talking about
Yes.
facts. Let's take
No, I
that.
mean, no,
We'll
that's
move.
true. It was donated by a family. That's true.
Right. Well, we'll
So
get
that
some more
might be a catch.
information, and we'll get the town administrator to give us some more information about the limitation of the land. Yes, I apologize for derailing the conversation. So the next, we already discussed the letters from Desi. The town moderator did send a communication reappointing the members of this committee. Again, I am glad to have everybody back, and we'll look forward to filling the vacancy that we have. So I guess that is everything that I had on the agenda. Does anybody have anything else that they want to move forward? Dave? Dave, go ahead.
Yep. So during the August 11th Board of Selectmen meeting, the chairman had some choice comments towards FinCom, and I'm going to cut right to the chase. I'd like Chairman Kowalski's apology to FinCom for his inaccuracies of what he said, and here's why. Mr. Kowalski stated that there are a group of people who had worked on the amendments to the regional agreement article. This article was subsequently passed over by Whitman Town Meeting. He points out that the FinCom chairman, as a member of the Regional Assessment Agreement Committee, was present 6 out of 7 meetings, but doesn't remember receiving any advice from FinCom prior to town meeting that we shouldn't be using the alternative method. He asserts that the selectmen were not informed. I'd like to point to Chairman Kowalski to the information published in the May 7th, 2018 town meeting, where FinCom voted 3-3-2 regarding this article. This was based on my understanding at the time that Selectman Lamatina and Mr. Chris George identified issues regarding the assessment language and that the assessment method was not fully understood by members of RAC and seemingly anyone else in Whitman, for that matter. FinCom's recommendations of 3-3-2 were made days prior to town meeting to allow for its publication. A point to remember that is that RAC never formally notified FinCom of the recommendations, nor let us know that they had voted on something which they had no understanding. So I say, if the chairman and other board of selectmen decide not to review FinCom's recommendations prior to town meeting, shame on them. Since my tenure on this committee, we've tried to get the board of selectmen more involved in the understanding in FinCom's recommendations. Rick, the chairman, has done that repeatedly every year. And our recommendations are meant to be representative of the townspeople. And I've heard Chairman Kowalski on more than one occasion state that the pulse of the townspeople needs to be identified. Well, since I've been on FinCom, we've tried to provide this information to Board of Selectmen. If he decides not to pay attention, that's on him. So, Mr. Chairman, I wait for your apology. Thank you.
I'd like to make some corrections to that. Mr. Lamatina did not tell us there was an issue with the assessment. Mr. Lamatina stated that the exit amounts were the exit, that we couldn't exit the agreement without the other town's permission, which is regular. It's part of every regional agreement. And that was what he campaigned on. He did it publicly in public meeting. He did it on phone calls. I was the one saying there was something wrong with the assessment. I had wanted to, but he had never publicly said that. Even when I text messaged him and I asked him about it, he said he didn't know. I'll read it later, but he stated he had no idea that I needed to go to Jeff.
This isn't a political statement. What I'm trying to say is that in Chairman Board of Selectmen Lamatina did mention there was a financial component that he doesn't fully understand and he doesn't feel comfortable recommending it. That's what was stated.
Right.
Okay, I don't remember that.
Can I just
jump in?
The
other reason.
Because I was at 6 out of the 7 RAC meetings, and I was a brand new chairman of the finance committee with no experience in how to calculate assessments to member towns. So the 7th of the 7 meetings was the first one that I didn't attend. That particular meeting was when Desi came to explain the whole process of the assessment and how it is calculated. So I really don't understand what Chairman Kowalski was saying when he said that I knew. I mean, yes, I sat on the RAC. We, and I think Dan, Selectman Salvucci said the same thing. I mean, we depend on the information to be provided by the schools and we present that information to the full committee, as part of our duties as a subcommittee member. So there is no doubt that I was there. There is no doubt that there were discussions about, the regional agreement and how the assessment was, supposed to be calculated. But that whole discussion was miles over my head at that particular time in my
None of this
financial
matters.
experience. So
None of this matters. This didn't start this year. This started long ago when the law was set, and we had Whitman and Hanson people. We had George Coffey's daughter was part of this law. George Coffey, I spoke to him quickly. He said that he was told that there wouldn't be any money for his disabled child, and that Kowalski, said to him, they're not going to pay for the extra for the disability, which was against the law at the time, because that's 766. My father headed that law that said you have to pay to the child's ability. So he went and became part of this other lawsuit. This lawsuit, because of people within our, Cole was the head of the school committee at the time. It's going to be hard to say you don't know that. So Cole, he has a little bit of explaining to do. He can pretend that he knew nothing. That's going to be a hard stretch. This is a major educational law that started as his foot. So that's going to be a hard stretch. I don't think pointing fingers. I think telling the whole story is best. I do have to say that I am concerned that a lot of people that manage not to say anything and distract and do everything are now cheering on the state coming in. Oh no, asking to collaborate before they go to the state. They should know that the state's already involved. So those meetings are worthless from the school on back.
Right.
We deserve, so I don't think that I do agree that it was inappropriate for him to say, but I think it's a lot of people have to explain things, not just him.
Kathleen, did you want to add something?
Not really add, just ask Dave, could you send a copy of the text of what you just read? Because I agree, this was my first year on FinCom. But I know we worked really hard and met every week, forever it seemed, and people knew what we were doing. We were upfront and honest, and for someone to say that we were not communicating effectively is a slap in the face. And we didn't always agree, all 9 of us, but we worked as a cohesive group, and we tried to keep the public informed. And so if I could see the copy of your text, Dave, that's all I'm looking for. I agree that the committee, our chairs owed an apology if someone is saying we didn't do our job of informing the community. We did a better job than anyone else in the town.
Yeah, all right. So I appreciate everybody's input. Like I said, this is something that's going to be going on for a little while. So like I said, I took exceptions from the selectman chair's comments as well. But like I said, I'm not looking for an apology. I'm looking for an investigation. I'm looking for someone to say, this is what went wrong and it won't happen again. Someone's going to take responsibility for this expense that the Whitman taxpayers paid for dearly and continue to pay dearly for, including the resulting Moody rating. I think it can't be understated that that's going to be part of it. So.
Well, it was said that it was a pendulum, and everybody knew there was a pendulum swinging back and forth. But I think what people forgot to identify when we went Whitman Hanson, is every time that pendulum swung, it swung money out of education, which is a total of almost a little more than $7 million. And it was a quick ride to the bottom. It was a way to completely, effectively underfund schools without people having a choice, thinking that they're funding them well. It was the fastest way to underfund our children. And I think people should be accountable for that more than anything. I hope people start hearing that. $7 million since 2007 swung and cheated out of the educational system that should have been in it. That they should have been, both towns should have been accountable for paying. I hope they hear that.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary, for your comments. Kathleen, Dave, Al, John, Chuck, again, I appreciate all the input from the committee. I look forward to enjoying these last couple of weeks of summer. Is there anybody else that wants to throw anything out there just for discussion before I entertain a motion? Oh, Rosemary's got one more thing.
Now that we have 2 committee members, I want to know if we could just really follow that the the handbook. There's dates on it. We're going to be setting our levy soon. I want to make sure we're part of that process. I really feel like we weren't. Make sure we're collecting truly to the levy, having those discussions in public. I think that's really important, particularly because we're going to have to, keep up, make sure that it's accountable to that Madden recommendations. Are we collecting a levy to the amount to meet these needs? We don't want an override. Do everything we can to prevent that override and create that consistent taxation that doesn't overburden that in small increments instead of, big jumps here and there. We want to make sure that it's reasonable. So I'm hoping that we use that handbook and we follow those timelines and we're part of that levy process,
Okay, excellent. And one more thing we should think about too is with Frank leaving and, we're going to be working with a new town administrator. It's going to be important for the accountant to be a much bigger player in our budget process. So I think keep in mind, as we move forward in this budget cycle, that's something that we should include him a lot more in our discussions and communicate. John's recently sent him an email to ask about some of the money that wasn't spent in last year's budgets, right, John?
Yeah, I reached out to him regarding to get a report of the amount returned. So basically, it just lists the accounts of the monies returned. And I've got some questions on that, and I'm actually working on a 5-year analysis of what was returned from all the different accounts. So hopefully,
John, can you send that out to the group?
I haven't. I got to finish all my research on it first before I do that.
Great. All right, John, we appreciate the work that you do as well, and thank you for hosting the meeting. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second it?
Okay, we have a second, and now we have a motion. Very
We have a
good.
motion.
All
Chuck
right,
motions.
roll call, John.
Wait, who made
Yes.
the,
Oh, sorry.
Chuck made the motion, Al seconded it.
Sorry.
thank you.
Okay, John,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Okay, thank you all for participating.